In this video, I'll show you how to use the PowerCards API script to create some really souped up macros that not only will allow you to perform attacks and damage, but will also allow you to perform special visual effects, add sound effects, add status markers to targets, and automatically apply damage or healing depending on what you want to do. So, quick disclaimer before we begin, this does require a pro account because we are using the API. Alright, with that said, let's dig in. PowerCards is a script that's available in the standard Roll20 Script Library, so you can just install it via the one-click interface. If you're not familiar with how to install a script, I'm going to pop a card in the upper right of the screen that'll take you to another video that I did that shows you how to set things up. Alright, so how do we begin? Well, to start things out, we need to figure out what our macro is going to do. And for illustrative purposes, I'm going to keep things simple. We're going to look at the Ray of Frost cantrip from D&D 5e. Basically what it is, you make a ranged spell attack. On a hit, you deal 1d8 cold damage. 60-foot range, pretty basic spell. Okay, now, yes, you can just run this from the sheet itself. I could click on Ray of Frost, that would do it. But I want more than just the attack roll and the damage. I want sound effects, I want visual effects, I want to automatically apply damage to my target. I've got a bunch of things that I want to do that aren't going to happen as a result of just clicking the link in the spell sheet. So, here's how we start out. And to kind of make this easier to read, I'm going to do all the command typing here in this notepad window. And ultimately, I'm going to take what we put in this notepad window into my wizard's character sheet so that we'll be able to run it right from his character sheet. Alright, to start things out, we're going to start with exclamation point power. This says we're using the PowerCards script. And then a space, and then two open curly braces. And then I'm also going to come down to a new line and close those curly braces. Okay, first thing we want to do is display the name of whatever we're doing. So with that, we're going to say -- name, and the name will be Ray of Frost. New line, 2 dashes, and I want some information about the spell. I want to include like what kind of an attack this is, if it's a ranged spell attack, if it's a melee touch attack, what kind of an attack is this? So I'm going to say left sub, and we're going to say this is a ranged spell attack. And then one more for the right sub, we're going to say 60-foot range. So we'll see what that looks like in just a second. And then lastly, we want to put in the actual attack roll. So we're going to say attack, colon, and then a pipe. And the cool thing about macros with PowerCards is you can create variables that can be reused. And this is something that I see people asking a lot on the forums, both on the Roll20 forums and over on the Roll20 Reddit page. People are saying, well, how can I create a variable to use in a macro? And the answer is, with regular macros, you can't. But with PowerCards, you totally can. So let's do that. We're going to create 2 open brackets, and then a space, another open bracket, $ATK for attack. This is going to become my variable that will hold the result of my attack roll. And for my attack roll, I'm going to say 1d20 plus my spell attack modifier. So that's going to be plus at open curly brace spell attack bonus. Okay, and then we're going to close the brackets. Now, one thing that's important to mention here, spaces matter. So, for example, you see right here, I have the 2 double brackets and then a space and then the marker for the roll identifier here. If I delete the space, if I just have that be 3 brackets in a row, and I try to run this, I'm just going to copy and put it into the chat, I'm going to get a type error like this one. So spacing is important. You want to make sure that you have spaces after the double brackets, and then after whatever you've done here, have another space. So like right here, I have another space between the end curly brace and the double brackets. So you want to make sure you have the spacing correct in order for this to work properly. If you find you get this type error where you can't read property substring of undefined, chances are you're missing a space somewhere. let's copy this. And I'm going to go into my character sheet. And I'll go over to attributes and abilities. I'll create a new one. And I'm going to say this is my, call this the new ray of frost. And I'll paste this in, save it. I'm going to show it as a token action. Highlight Mumford here. And there's my new ray of frost macro. Okay, I'm going to click that. Okay, and as you can see over here, let's zoom in on this a little bit. Okay, so right here, here's that name property. This is the left sub saying the range spell attack, like we said. Here's the right sub, that's the range. And then there's our attack roll. And if we hover over that, we can see, okay, I rolled a d20 plus 9, which is my spell attack modifier, which gives me a total of 20. Fantastic. Okay, we're off to a good start. But let's take this a step further. Maybe we want to automatically calculate whether or not we hit this, right? So for that, we need to know a little bit about the creature we're attacking. I would need to know, if I was casting at this Hobgoblin Captain, I would need to know the Hobgoblin's AC. So for what I can say here is versus, and I'll put in AC at target AC. And what this is going to do now is it's going to prompt me to select a target, and then we'll see whether or not the attack was successful against that target. Now, one quick aside here. If you're the GM, you may not want your players to be able to do stuff like this, because you may not want them to know what the creature's AC is. But if you're the GM and you're making these macros for yourself, this type of thing is invaluable, because I lose track of how many times I ask my players, hey, what's your AC again? This is something that will just make that happen for you. So what we'll do now is we'll copy this. We'll go back into Mumford's character sheet here. I'm going to just replace what we've done so far. Paste all that new stuff in there. We'll save this. All right, here we go again. New Ray of Frost. Now I'm being prompted, choose my target. I'm going to choose the Hobgoblin Captain. Okay, and you see now we have the attack versus AC of 12. So that's a hit. Awesome. Now we need to add damage, okay? Because right now we're just making an attack roll. That's fantastic, but we want to actually do some damage to the goblin. So let's go to a new line here, and we'll come in, we'll say dash dash. Now, here's the thing. I only want to roll damage if my attack is successful. Okay, because there's nothing worse than when you're a player and you roll like a 2 on an attack roll, and then you see that your damage would have been max damage if you'd hit. That's just depressing. So we're only going to have the damage rolled if the attack was successful. And you couldn't do this in a normal macro. There's no way to put conditional logic into a regular macro, but you can do it with power cards. And this is another one of the most commonly asked questions I see out on the forums is, how do I do like an if-else statement in a macro? You can't. But with power cards, you can. So here's what we're going to do. You start out the same with 2 dashes, and then you put 2 question marks. That tells power cards that this is a conditional situation. Basically, this is the if. Right? So if $ATK, if our attack is greater than or equal to the target's AC, 2 more question marks, that's basically the then. So if the attack is greater than the AC, then damage, pipe, and we're going to do another roll. So we'll do another 2 brackets, a space, another bracket. I'm going to create another variable here for my damage. We'll call it DMG. And the damage for this is going to be actually 2d8, because my wizard is a 10th level, and the spell's damage goes up by 1d8 when you reach 5th level. So he hasn't made it to 11th level yet, so he's not going to have 3d8, but he'll have 2d8. So damage is going to be 2d8. Finish that off. Okay, so now we're only going to roll damage if we've beaten the Hobgoblin's AC. All right, so let's run this and see what that looks like. All right, so we'll just replace that. Save. And we rolled an 18 versus an AC of 12, and we rolled 12 damage. All right, so this is coming along nicely. Now let's soup things up a little bit more. We've got our attack, we've got our damage. That's your basic stuff, right? I want to have a little bit more flash to this. I want there to be sound effects and visual effects here. So let's start out with the sound effect. All right, so space, dash, dash. And to play a sound effect, you need to have the Roll20 AM script installed. That's also included in the one-click library. It is a separate install from PowerCards. So to do this, you need both the PowerCards script and then you also need to have Roll20 AM installed. Just want to make that clear to everybody. Okay, so now to do the sound effect, it's dash dash sound FX pipe and then underscore audio, comma play, comma no menu, and then whatever sound you want to play. And I actually have a sound effect in my playlist called Freeze Ray. So I want to use that. So what's this actually doing? This is basically wrapping around the Roll20 AM command. So if you've used Roll20 AM, you know that you start out with audio, you say what you're doing with the audio, whether you're going to play it or stop it, whether or not you want there to be a menu that shows up in the chat, and then the actual name of the track that you want to play. So this is just going to wrap all that right in there. So let's do this. We'll copy this. And we'll put that into Mumford's Ray of Frost ability. Okay, and here we go. New Ray of Frost. All right, and you heard that crackle sound, right? That's my freeze ray. Love that. Okay, so Mumford has fired that off. He has hit the goblin. We see we did 7 damage. That's fantastic. Okay, let's take it a step further. Now let's have some visual effects here. We want to have a beam of ice shoot out from Mumford toward the hobgoblin. And we can do that if we go to the FX tool here. I'm going to make this a beam of frost, right? So you can see what that looks like. Okay, that's what we want to do. We want to have the macro automatically do that. And we can. Back into our code here, what we're going to say here is dash dash, and for visual effects, it's VFX underscore OPT, and then a pipe. And then because we're doing a beam, we need to specify the beam's origin and the beam's target. So the origin will be Mumford. That'll be the token we have selected. So that'll be at selected pipe token ID. So this is defining the start point of the beam. And then the beam's going to go at target pipe token ID. So the target we selected earlier up here, that will carry through to the visual effect. So we don't need to prompt the user multiple times. The same target will get reused over and over again. And then lastly, we want our visual effect. And I'm going to actually make this a little bit wider so we get some more screen real estate. And that's going to be beam dash frost. Okay, so that'll give us our ice beam. So let's copy this. This is getting big. All right. Paste that in. And now let's select Mumford again. We'll click New Ray of Frost, pick my target. And there we go. We got our beam of ice going out there. We heard the freeze ray sound effect. We've got our attack, and we've got our damage. Okay, this is looking really great. But there's more to it than just this, right? We've got our attack, we've got our damage, we've got our visual effects, but there's another effect that happens with Ray of Frost. The target takes the cold damage, and its speed is reduced by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. That's one of those little things that's really easy to forget. So we want to have the macro remind us of that. So let's go back into our game, and we'll go back into the notepad window. And we're going to go to a new line here, and we're going to say another conditional statement. We're basically going to copy this first part up here, right? Because we want to say if our attack was successful. Then what we want to say here is slowed. We're going to say slowed, colon pipe, and we're going to say that target's speed is reduced by 10 feet until start of your next turn. Okay, so let's copy this, put that into our macro, Save that. Here we go. Mumford. New ray of frost. Okay, you see this time we missed, right? If I zoom in on that. Okay, we didn't hit. So it didn't display the damage, and it didn't display the slowed stuff. All right, so let's try again. Let's see if Mumford has better luck this time around. Okay, that did connect. And we see there's our damage, and there's the text saying that the target speed is reduced. Okay, fantastic. But let's take that a step further. Instead of just putting the text there, let's also put a marker on the hobgoblin indicating visually that he has been affected by something, in effect that he's been slowed. So back to our notepad window. Okay, and PowerCards itself doesn't have the ability to put markers on other tokens. That would require something like token mod, which is another Roll20 API script that's extraordinarily versatile, and I've used it in a bunch of my other videos. Basically, it allows you to programmatically manipulate tokens. So if only there were some way to have PowerCards call token mod to put a marker on that token. Oh wait, there is! So in order for this to work, you need to already have token mod installed. And you'll want to type in token-mod-help. And you want to make sure that this setting, players can IDs, is currently on, right? And if it's not on, then you can click this toggle button to set it to on. That's the prerequisite for this next piece to work. Here's how we do that. --, and then same like thing as before. We're going to use this exact same syntax up here, right? We want to get the same conditional statement in place, right? So assuming we hit, then we want to call token mod. The way you call other scripts from PowerCards is like this. You start out with API and then underscore and the name of the script. So the token mod command, for example, is token-mod. So instead of typing !token mod, you type in API_token mod. And then it's a pipe that tells PowerCards that we're about to send input into token mod. And we're going to say _IDs. Now, if you've worked with token mod before, you know that the syntax for token mod looks something like this, where you would say !token mod and then --IDs and other stuff. Well, because PowerCards uses the -- here to indicate different rows or different attributes about the card itself, we can't use the -- syntax. So instead, we replace the -- with underscores. So token mod _IDs, and then we're going to say at target token ID. So take the token that is targeted. We're going to underscore ignore selected. So we don't care about the token that we've currently selected. And what we're going to do is set a status marker on it. So instead of -- set, that's going to be underscore set. Status markers. And then whatever status marker you want to apply. And I think that this one here, tread, this looks like a boot. So that's kind of a neat little indicator. I think that'll work well here. So let's do this. Let's copy all this, pop it into Mumford's character sheet, save it, and here we go. New ray of frost. All right, and you notice, so zoom in here, we got all the appropriate stuff. 19 versus AC 12, damage 9. The slowed text appeared, and if we zoom in on the Hobgoblin Captain, we can see now he has that little boot icon right there. So he has been slowed. So that's our visual indicator that that is the creature that was affected by the slow. But let's take that a step further. Roll20 gives you the ability to track spells and effects right in the turn order window. I've actually done another video on this, and there's a couple of ways you can do it. One way is by manually adding things to the turn order window, but there's a script called ACT that allows you to programmatically add things to the turn tracker. So let's use that script in conjunction with PowerCards. And That one isn't part of the Roll20 API library, so I'll include a link to it down in the description below so you can grab that. So let's go back in here. We're going to say, again, same deal as before. We're going to build our conditional statement, right? So I'm just going to copy and paste that. And now what I'm going to say here is API underscore ACT, right? That would be exclamation point act. And then -1, 1 underscore slow. Okay, so what does this mean? All right, in the ACT script, the syntax for that looks like this. It's ACT, and then the -1 is saying that we are counting down by 1 every round that this effect is in play. This next one is the number we start at. So we're going to start at 1, and then we're going to decrease by 1 every round. So that makes sense because we've only got an effect here that's only going to be in play for 1 round. And then --slow is what would appear in the turn tracker window. So because we can't use the dashes here, we're replacing that with an underscore. Okay, so let's grab this. Copy that. Replace Mumford's Ray of Frost. Delete. Check. And here we go. And there we go. Now you see that slow has been added there into the turn tracker window. So as we advance, doom, boom, and now the slow has expired. So it's a really neat little way for you to track things that have happened in game. But now let's take this a step even further. Let's make it so that this macro will automatically apply the damage to the Hobgoblin's token. So the author of the PowerCards script has another script called alter bars. And alter bars and PowerCards work very neatly together for stuff like this. So let's go back to our notepad window, all right? And let's go down, we'll make a new line here. We're going to copy our conditional statement again, and we'll pop that onto its own line. Here we go. And so what we're going to say here is alter bar, and then a pipe saying that we're directing input into alter bar. And we're going to say underscore target. And so the target that we are altering is going to be at target pipe token ID. And then we're going to do underscore bar. So we're going to say which bar that we're working with. That's going to be bar 1. And then underscore amount. This is going to be how much we are decreasing the bar by. So we're going to say minus, and then we're going to call our damage variable that we set up here. And the way that you reuse a variable like this is by putting it in brackets, and you want to use a caret, which is the symbol that's by the 6 on your keyboard. So caret, and then DMG. And then we're also going to pop a note in the chat box saying that we have decreased the target's health. And we're going to do that by saying underscore show pipe all. Let's copy this. Replace what's in Mumford's sheet here. New Ray of Frost. And you notice now, if I zoom in here, we have the attack. We just made it. We rolled 8 damage. He's slowed. And then we see NPC takes 8 damage. We didn't call him a Hobgoblin Captain. So the way you get the names to show up like that is go into the Hobgoblin's token and have the players be able to see the name. And now if we run that attack again, all right, you can see Hobgoblin Captain takes 4 damage now. So that's been updated. And we see that we are decreasing his health because he was at 38 a few minutes ago, and now he's down to 25. So we are automatically decreasing the target's health based on the damage that we do. Now, again, you may not want to do that because you may not want your players to manipulate the tokens that you work with or whatever. Totally fine. Don't include that line. But for those of you who do want to use that, you've got the ability. So now somebody may be looking at this and saying, okay, Nick, this is really nice, but you've missed a lot of things here. You haven't taken into account what happens if somebody's rolling at advantage or disadvantage. You don't have crits taken into consideration. There's still stuff missing here. Well, that's true. So we're not quite done yet. Let's change our attack now to account for advantage or disadvantage. And probably the easiest way to do that is going to be to prompt the user to tell us, are you rolling at advantage or are you rolling at disadvantage, or is this just a straight roll? For those of you who are subscribed to my channel, you know that a couple weeks back I put out a video on creating macros in Roll20. And one of the things that we saw was how to prompt the user to select something from a drop-down list. That's what we're going to do right now. We're going to embed one of those queries right into our power card to prompt the user for what type of roll they're working at. So I'm going to delete the 1d20 here, and I'm going to replace it with the following: a question mark, an open and a closing curly brace, and then within that we're going to say attack, and then pipe, standard, comma, 1d20, another pipe, this will be advantage, comma, and now we need to roll 2d20s and keep the highest one. And you may have seen I did another video on advanced dice rolling. The way that you do this is you say 2d20 KH1 for keep highest one. And then we're going to do the same thing for disadvantage, but that's going to be 2d20 keep lowest one, KL1 for keep lowest one. So we're going to prompt the user, are you rolling at standard? Are you rolling with advantage? Are you rolling with disadvantage? We're going to take the results of that and then add that to the spell attack bonus. So let's do this. We'll copy all this, put it into Mumford's character sheet here. And here we go. New Ray of Frost. And here we go. We get it prompted. What kind are we doing? Let's say we're rolling at advantage. Okay, and let's hover over that there. And if I zoom in, you can see that we rolled 2d20. Here's the 8 and the 12. So those are the 2d20s that we rolled. And our ultimate roll was a 21. So we took the 12 and we added that to our spell attack bonus of 9. So we are rolling correctly here. So now we can account for a standard roll or one that had advantage or disadvantage. But now you say, Nick, what about crits? Okay, let's put that in here too. So if we roll a nat 20, then we want to roll 4d8 instead of 2d8. So how do we do that? Well, let's come back to the line where we're determining damage. Okay, and what I'm going to do is modify this line a little bit. Right now we're saying if our initial attack roll is greater than or equal to the target's AC. Let's extend that. And we're going to say the attack dot base does not equal 20. So basically what this is saying is if the die roll itself was not a nat 20, then we're going to roll this damage. But now let's add to that. So let's say if we do roll a crit, so we'll do dash dash 2 question marks, and we're going to say ATK dot base does equal a nat 20. Then instead of saying damage, we're going to say critical hit pipe, and then we'll do crit damage, and that'll be 4d8. Okay, now notice I'm using a different ID here for the crit damage. I'm not reusing the one that we did earlier, and that's important because this value, DMG, is actually being set to 2d8 no matter what happens. Even if the attack doesn't hit, we're still going to create this roll ID with a value of 2d8 in it. We won't use it if we didn't actually hit, but it will actually perform the operation of setting it to 2d8. If we did this, then what would happen is we would set it as 2d8, and then we would reset it as 4d8. So even though the crit didn't happen, the value of DMG would be changed to 4d8. So let me actually show you what I mean here. I think this will be easier with an illustration. Let me copy this, and let's put this into Mumford's Ray of Frost. Okay, and here we go. New Ray of Frost. Okay, so you'll see here that if I zoom in, okay, we rolled a damage of 8, yet our Hobgoblin Captain took 22 points of damage. And that's because the value of DMG got reset. It went up to 4d8 instead of the original 2d8. So you don't want to reuse roll ID names when you are creating your power card macros. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to make this crit damage, and that'll be 4d8. And now we won't have that problem. Okay, but now we also need to provide the damage to our target if we roll a crit, right? So right now we're just rolling the damage. We want to apply it just like we did before. So we're going to come down here to our altar bar, and again, we're going to change that a little bit. We're going to make it like we did before. It'll say, and I'm just going to actually copy this whole chunk that we did earlier. All right, so and the attack base does not equal 20. Then we're going to actually apply the damage to the token. All right, but let's copy this whole line. And we're going to say if the attack base does equal 20, we're going to do an altar bar, and we're going to do crit damage. But there's one other thing that we need to do here. The calls to altar bar are kind of similar to what we did up here with DMG, in that this value will get reused. So we may accidentally set the altar bar to fire off the crit, even if we don't perform a crit. So what we want to do is give the altar bars their own unique ID. We're just going to do that by putting a 1 after the first one and a 2 after the second one. And so now we know we're only going to call the altar bar that is relevant for us. So if we have the attack and it is not a nat 20, but it was successful, then we're going to do altar bar 1, which will subtract the initial damage that we rolled, the 2d8. If the attack is a nat 20, then we're going to run altar bar 2, which will apply the crit damage. All right, so let's copy all this, and let's plug that into Mumford's character sheet here. All right, and now I'm going to roll New Ray of Frost a whole bunch of times here until we get a crit. All right, so many dice rolls later, I just got a crit. Let's zoom in on that. Okay, so you see we got the 29, critical hit of 16. Hobgoblin Captain takes 16 points of damage, and if I hover over the die roll there, zoom in again, you can see that we rolled 4d8, and then we applied that 4d8 to the Hobgoblin's HP. So there you have it. We now have a very souped up Ray of Frost attack macro that looks really slick and does a lot of great stuff for us. And even though we've spent like the last half an hour building this macro, we've still barely scratched the surface of all the capabilities that PowerCards provides. So what I'm going to do is drop a link down in the description to the PowerCard wiki and to the PowerCard Roll20 forum. So you can check those out if you have questions. I would say if you have questions on these, just because they do get so involved, you'll want to post your questions over on the Roll20 forum rather than in the YouTube comments, just because you see here, this is a wall of text. That's going to be hard to read in a YouTube comment. So put your questions over in the Roll20 forums. It'll be a lot easier for folks to look at what you're doing and answer questions that way. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing. And until next time, folks, have a great day.